Series 7 Sports Heart by Jensen. Yamaha. You picked the heart. Extended warranties. Financing. Qualifies for health tax credit. And remember, we care.
Welcome to cyberspace, my friends. The Electrosphere.
Oh, dude, you little fox.
If there was a moment that set the tone for Ace Combat in all of its future installments, you probably never experienced it, at least outside Japan. The 2000 release of Ace Combat 3 was pretty infamously nerfed for its international audience, which is a shame because it nailed the final piece of the puzzle that made Ace Combat what it is today: the storytelling. Ace 1 hit the fundamentals, Ace 2 nailed the details, but this is the game that paved the way for the big three: 4, 5, and 0, the games that pushed the series out of the niche market and into mainstream gaming, which was unheard of. Flight combat, even simplified, just isn't a mainstream genre. I wish it was, but it isn't. Sure, the mechanics are a bit more in-depth, you're not planted on the ground, but gamers will memorize libraries worth of movesets or develop deep, complex strategies, things that are just as difficult, if not more so, than Flight. So, why the disconnect? It's because you have to make it personal. Shooters, fighters, adventures, they all put faces and stories to what you're doing. And that's what was missing. Hardcore simmers might be fine with a text box or a 9-line to get through the day, but for general audiences, that's just too bland. Well, Ace Combat changed all that. Starting here in 3, we'd have fully fleshed out stories with enough characters, perspectives, and manga-style villains to hook the masses. You still get all the military porn, but now you're the hero saving the world and all those around you from devastation. Problem is, we never got to experience it. For most of us, or at least for me, Ace Combat 4 is where we first saw the narrative direction. We knew there was more to Ace 3 thanks to early internet, it just wasn't accessible. The devs said there wasn't a budget, but judging from the box blurb, a bogey-bustin', G-force pullin' insanity ride. I don't know, I get the feeling that they just thought this would be a bit over our heads. Well, leave it to the community to set things right. Look, we can handle Ghost in the Shell, guys. We can handle this. From 2009 until now, we've had, I believe, 2 localization projects, Project Nemo and Load Word, who took the time to translate the full original game. Every dialogue box, every wiki entry, even the movies were re-encoded with proper subtitles. The only things missing are the wingman callouts, which are probably just them yelling at me after eating that missile. So join on me. That's what it means to fight in an element. We're doing this. Ace Combat 3 returns us to the Usean continent in 2040, but the factions at play here aren't nations or flags, but multinational corporations. General Resource and Noyacom, Newcom, should be Noyacom, are on the brink of a shooting war, and only the UN's Special Reaction Force stands between them, which is where you come in. And right from the jump, you'll notice there's a heck of a lot more world building going on here than we got. The international version covered the bare basics in its text dumps, but here everything is given a proper treatment in the movies and the dialogue. There's plenty of video calls between your team and the usual briefings, but I love that they used commercials and news clips to show you the world as it stands. It's efficient storytelling, and more importantly, it's just one step away from Paul Verhoeven's satire.
You haven't dismantled your MX stockpile.
Pakistan is threatening my border!
That's it, Buster. No more military aid.
Nukem. Get them before they get you. Another quality home game from Butler Brothers.
And everything is backfilled for the audience. The corporations, telecom providers, software, even the search engine. And it's all added to a handy glossary if you need. For now though, the player pilot, canonically known as Nemo, is part of the United Peace Enforcement Organization, and you need to bring order to chaos. Which is where it gets interesting. The conflict is referred to as the Intercorporate War, but that's only a pretense for where the real battle goes. After a few missions putting out fires between Newcom and General Resource, you're given an ultimatum by a competing faction, the choice to switch sides. This wasn't in the international release, which mostly follows the UPO path. Here you have a branching storyline, choices between and within the 4 main factions: Newcom, General Resource, UPO, and the rebel group Ouroboros. Each faction offers a slightly different outcome to the conflict, though they all converge on the central villain, Dyson Abyssal. Dyson sees all conflict as a product of the flesh, the body, which, in the sense of original sin, isn't wrong, but he is hell-bent on stripping humanity of it, uploading everyone, willingly or not, into cyberspace. He plays to all of the factions' vanities. Some want power, some are bound by disabilities, some think it will just make them superior. But the big twist is Dyson himself is long dead. His consciousness is already part of the electrosphere, making his motives for transformation even less altruistic, if you could even call them that in the first place. Many have compared the themes here to Ghost in the Shell, and they're not wrong. It might be cyberspace instead of cyber brains, but the themes of transhumanism are absolutely there. Dyson sees uploading, or sublimation as it's called here, as the answer to mankind's woes, and is more than willing to play puppet master to those around him, playing on colleagues' loyalties or frustrations. Technology is shown to be running away from human control, and all of this is set against a backdrop of corporate war. The science at any cost of Nucom versus the financial might of General Resource, and all the while the UN uses all of this as an excuse to grant itself war powers. It's still the devil's chessboard, but now with a high-tech veneer.
10,000 acres of wooded residential land were scorched in an instant when a laser cannon aboard the Strategic Defense Peace Platform misfired today during routine startup tests.
Environmentalists call it a disaster.
But don't they always?
Now for gameplay, you'd think it would be more over the top thanks to the futuristic setting, but it's actually kind of the opposite. Aircraft respond quickly to inputs, but feel a lot heavier than Ace 2. It's not sluggish like the first game, but turning circles are much wider. If you dip beneath 300 kph, there's a new stalling effect, so if you try to squeeze behind a slower enemy, you can find yourself stuck in space while you get your airspeed back. It's much less dash and turn, you have to commit to your attack runs. It's no sim, you can't depart or anything, but it just feels like they were trying for a more mature flight model. Which normally I like, it just doesn't quite mesh with the arcadey missions. I'll get there in a second. Hey, she's also in 5! The fighters are great though. Nucom has its own stable of sci-fi dolphin-like aircraft, but to me the standouts are the next-gen takes on real-world air power. They're all recognizable Russian, European, and US craft, but with flashy new canards or wings to represent, I guess, future updates. Some are based on real-world prototypes, but everything, even the more modest craft, gets sleek new lines thanks to the Coffin system. Why bother with clumsy windows and joysticks when you can be synaptically linked to every system in the craft? Each faction has a mostly unique selection of fighters, with better craft unlocked at set points in the campaign. And we have some exclusives. Being sci-fi means we have to play it kinda loose, but as close to real life as we can get, there's the X-32, the competitive to the F-35 in the JSF program, the A-12 or SR-71 as it would come to be known, and the X-36, a scale model technology demonstrator here used by both General Resource and Ouroboros. And while OB's Night Ravens are pure sci-fi, Dyson's Aurora is actually based on heavily speculated designs thrown around in the 90s. There's also new weapons. Depending on craft, guns can be swapped between fast Gatling or slower cannons, and missiles offer choices of toss bombs, glide bombs, even splitters. There's no switching needed, air-to-ground types are used automatically, and depending on your setup, later fighters can ripple as many as 6 shots at a time. Which you'll need. Lock-on range is longer, but missiles feel kinda random this time. Sometimes they'll hit, other times they'll break away, even with a perfect lineup. Later missions become total spam fests, which does look cool, but it's probably not what you're used to if you're a series fan. And the branching campaign means you'll have plenty of missions to use them. There's air-to-air and air-to-ground types, but standouts have you wiping out hives of nanobots, collapsing an underground city, or shooting down weapon satellites on the edge of space. Dark blue indeed. Different factions means you might see the same battle played out from opposite sides, or even have to face your former teammates, which is always a gut punch. Eventually though, every path has you moving in to take down Ouroboros in one form or another. My only complaint is they're all too short. Yeah, if there's a weak point to Ace 3, it's the missions themselves. Even with redirects or updates, you'll only ever have a handful of targets, even if they're spread across the map. Yes, a few missions like the Canyon Run or Industrial Escort exist, but mostly things can be wrapped up in well under 5 or even 3 minutes. Now, this could work if the game was arcadey like 2, but again, you can really get lost in your turns if you screw things up. A ranks are mostly based on time, so if you get stuck on an enemy or your missiles just decide to go wild, you might as well just restart there. And it's not as if you're in much danger, enemies mostly ignore you until the end game. I don't know, it just feels like an awkward mix of gameplay and mission design that doesn't quite work, something Ace Combat usually nails. Presentation, though, is amazing. Ace 3 was in that last big push of PS1 games before the 6th generation took over, and it showed. It had crazy effects like sun reflections off the ocean, heat blur, and enough missile trails to fill the screen. Things you'd expect from the PlayStation 2, sure, but not the PS1. Menus and displays have that great 2000s look, sort of like Wipeout 3, and the end mission replays are much longer, giving you a real chance to soak up your accomplishments. If the Ghost in the Shell themes weren't enough, the animated bits were done by the same studio, Production IG, and music goes for a more low-key electronica style, which isn't as catchy, but does feel more mature and appropriate. So, the big question to rule them all: was it worth it to finally play the Japanese version? Oh, absolutely. Ace 3 weaves a cool story and does it in a stylish way. Hardcore fans will probably have experienced this already, but I'm glad to count myself among them now. Sure, it can be a little dry from time to time. There's a lot of small windowed video calls to sit through, which can get a little stale after a few playthroughs, but this was new territory for them, and even 2 CDs worth of storage is much more limited than later DVDs. Massive props to the final reveal, too. After completing each path, the true ending is revealed, showing that Nemo was itself an AI used to predict how the war would play out. It makes each one of your playthroughs canonical, since each one only represents a simulation, a possible outcome. Usually branching campaigns are retcons, so only one ending is canon, but Ace 3 turns that completely upside down while leaving the actual resolution open-ended. Clever storytelling, guys. Now, I'll admit, after playing this again after all these years, I think this is one of the weaker playing games in the series. Missions are surprisingly short, which doesn't mesh with the slower flight model, but that does mean that, at the risk of committing absolute blasphemy, that the international release makes for a better playing game. Not having wingmen means you have to complete everything yourself, which actually gives you something to do, and the campaign here is a best-of selection of the full game. I know it won't be popular, but my opinion after finally playing the proper version of Ace 3 is this is probably the most transformative game of the series, but on its own, it's not one of the best. Ace 4 is where Project Ace has perfected both the storytelling and the gameplay, and yeah, I'm biased, that's my favorite of the series, but if any of the games are crying out for a remake, I'd say it's Electrosphere. If Namco could get Studio IG to animate more segments between the missions and flesh out the campaign, all with modern graphics and gameplay, hell yeah, chef's kiss. Now, will it happen? Well, probably not, but hey, a guy can dream. But go ahead, tell me I'm wrong in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to the community who finally let us experience the game as it was originally intended. I'll be back with another review, and be sure to keep going, even when things get tough, because you are worth it.